Without much introduction, sectarians, the feds, the apocalypse, let's go.
Welcome, my son.
Do you even see any sort of...
David made such statements as, "We are ready for war."
Over 7 weeks, it ended apparently with many deaths.
Imagine you are living on a secluded ranch in Texas, surrounded by a tight ring of military personnel and FBI agents. You and your followers are convinced that the apocalypse will unfold exactly according to your script. You must defend your stronghold, fight the authorities, refuse to surrender, and never die. This sounds like the plot of the video game Far Cry 5, where you find yourself at the heart of a conflict with a dangerous cult and a powerful force. But what if I told you that this story actually happened, and that this tragedy became the biggest failure in FBI history, culminating in one of the most terrifying moments in American history? America is a country where religious cults thrive. Since the 19th century, new movements have emerged here, attracting people seeking salvation. Prophets and messiahs, like mushrooms after rain, lead thousands of followers. One such cult was the Branch Davidian, a group that formed based on old Christian teachings and quickly gained attention due to its charismatic leader, David Koresh.
Revelation states that Christ has the key of David. Only he can open and none can shut. There's 150 Psalms here.
Koresh, young and confident, became the new Messiah for hundreds of people. His teachings were a mix of the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah, with an inevitable apocalypse that he was destined not just to witness, but to initiate. At the time of the events, he was only 33 years old, and he firmly took on the role of the Savior, claiming that the apocalypse would come only according to his will. Life at the Mount Carmel Ranch, 10 kilometers from the Texas town of Waco, was governed by strict laws set by Koresh. He not only proclaimed that the apocalypse was near, but also claimed to be the chosen one who would lead his followers to salvation. Discipline, faith in the prophet, and absolute devotion ruled this place. David Koresh prohibited his followers from recognizing official marriages, and the women of the sect were required to become his wives, including as sexual partners. Among the most controversial aspects of his teachings were relationships with minors. These practices, to put it mildly, raised serious concerns among the local authorities. It all started with weapons. Koresh began buying not only pistols and rifles, but also chemicals for making explosives, which attracted the authorities' attention. The U.S. police, and later the FBI, began to monitor him. Although the sect members were on high alert and quickly noticed the surveillance, the authorities insisted on searching the Mount Carmel compound. However, the operation was carried out very poorly. The spies, posing as students, were unable to remain undetected and were exposed even before the operation began. Nevertheless, the FBI obtained a search warrant and preparations for the assault began. On February 28, 1993, the FBI and the National Guard set out to storm the Mount Carmel Ranch. However, when the approaching forces were detected, the situation took a completely different turn. The press and local residents were already aware of the impending raid, and the cult members were ready to defend themselves. When the FBI vans arrived, they were met by armed cult members, ready to fight to the end. It is still unclear who fired the first shot. However, the battle was intense, and 4 FBI agents and 6 cult members were killed that day. The first raid ended in failure. After the failed raid, Mount Carmel was completely sealed off. A siege began, lasting over 2 months. The FBI tried to convince Koresh to surrender, but he refused, claiming that God had told him to stay. In response, the cult members barricaded themselves in their compound, preparing for the final test. The cult members were not suffering. They lived off their food and water supplies, and the damaged buildings only strengthened their belief in the inevitability of the apocalypse. The siege continued, but the situation could have dragged on for much longer, until the authorities decided to launch a second raid. On April 19, 1993, the second raid took place. The National Guard used tanks and tear gas. However, the cult members, equipped with gas masks, were prepared for the attacks. When the fire started, no one could stop it. The firestorm engulfed the entire compound, and only 9 people survived. April 19th was a tragic day. 76 people, including Koresh himself and 18 children, died. Forensics showed that many had shot themselves. Others had burned or suffocated from smoke. It was the end, but not the end of the story. The operation sparked huge controversy, and to this day, many still believe that the authorities' actions were excessive and brutal. The storming of Mount Carmel was the largest tragedy in the history of clashes between sects and government authorities. It was not only a defeat for the FBI, but also a signal to the public of the consequences that a clash of ungoverned force and beliefs can have. The history we have reviewed continues to stir and raise questions about the legality of the use of force and the limits of state power.